Good morning. It's Wednesday, so you know what that means. It must be Woke Women Wednesday. Senator Dianne Wilkerson here with you this morning, and oh boy, we have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to squeeze. It might sound like I'm talking a little faster than I normally do because I will be, just to get it all in. We come to you every Wednesday morning at 11. And you know that my fierce and fearless colleague, City Councilor Julia Mejia, comes to you at 8 on that same day. So this evening I start at 11. I bring it to you at 11, all things Black, Brown, and COVID, which means everything. And then she closes it out on Wednesday. And I'm sure she'll have something really important for you this evening. There's just a lot going on in Greater Boston. You know, I always start by saying thank you to the sisters with a vision who had this notion, and one brother, by the way, who had this idea that it was important 2 years ago that we have another medium through which we could bring you timely information on what's happening with Black and Brown people in and around Boston. Although we now know that our fandom is international, national and international, and I'm privileged and proud to know that because we want to educate. I always tell folks when you come near us, when you come near me at 11, you come near Julia, you should always have your thumbs on your keyboard on your phone or a piece of paper and a pencil, because something we tell you is going to be important information in the 30 minutes that we have. And so I want to get to it. You'll hear a lot about this later, but you know, WWOC, Woke Women Radio, has been Woke Women Media, right? Has really been focused on things impacting Black women, Black and Brown women, and even Black people, like children and people of color in this city. So important because there's just a lot of different things moving at the same time. So much. In fact, I talk about my colleague, City Councilor Julia Mejia, and I just want to say, I said, you'll hear from her later this evening, but I do want to note the appreciation for this swiftness in which she issued the statement yesterday expressing disappointment that neither of the two finalists identified and announced yesterday for the position of superintendent of the Boston Public School System, neither one is a person of color. Nobody, we're not saying that that is absolutely required. We're saying that part of the thinking in any rational recruitment process must take into account that more than 80% of the children over which you will manage, the system over which you will manage, are children of color. And so having a documented history of success with moving that population is got to be on the list of critical requirements. That's why the initial response was, what? No people of color. But what is really, really, really meant is that you have to know something about the population if the focus continues to be provide elevating the educational achievement and attainment for our children. And so thank you, Counselor Mejia, for just always, being on it. And as they say, speaking truth to power. We got to do better. We got to do better. This is Juneteenth week. I really want to start with that. Just so you say, at this point, last week we had just an amazing and sobering discussion with Leah Randolph, the president of Commonwealth Wellness, Health and Wellness, and also the president of the Massachusetts Black Alcohol and Addiction Council, reporting and updating us on their mini conference that was convened at RCC 2 weeks ago today. In fact, I was there. And she shared with us a lot of things, but the one that stuck in my head, which I want to lay on you again today, and to tell you, we'll have another really interesting and exciting guest next week. Every other week I try, certainly over the summer, I'm going to do some recapping and just updating on things happening. But she shared with us what is happening around addiction in Massachusetts. Opioid addiction, in fact, has become the number one killer of Black men in Massachusetts. Isn't that scary? because it's scary to me. I suspect it's scary to you as well. And in fact, the number of Black male opioid deaths has increased over 200% in the last 3 years. Think about that. This is like, that means during COVID, COVID is not even the highest killer, and we lost lots. It's opioid addiction in Massachusetts. And although we're not the biggest, state in the nation by any means, but we're in the top 5. I think we're number 4 in the country, which means there's 46 states that have less deaths per capita from opioid addiction for Black people, Black males in particular, than Massachusetts. We're number 4. We're number 4. Now, mind you, you recall we were in a bit of a panic at the beginning of the whole vaccination process last February in 2021 because Massachusetts was in the bottom 5. We were number 48, I think, or 46 in terms of Black vaccination. And I like to say we had a lot to do with it, the Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition. And then we actually spawned a sister organization in Springfield, Mass. Called the Springfield Black COVID-19 Coalition. We went to work. We have the 2 largest percentages of Black residents in Boston in our 2 east-west cities, Springfield and Boston. And within a matter of a month and a half, we went from 40 in the 40s to the top 5. But it took us work to get in that top 5. So we did, that was a good thing, right? But we're in the top 5 in Black male opiate addiction in the Commonwealth, like the Commonwealth, the bedrock of healthcare advancement in the rest of the country, if not the rest of the world, in the city that boasts like the number 1 children's hospital, the number 1 Mass Eye Hospital, the number 1 General Hospital, and Mass General and Brigham and Women, number one in the, not nation, in the world. And this is what we do. And if that doesn't alarm you, I don't know what would or could, because we should all be concerned about that. So I'm going to leave that there. Now we're going to talk about Juneteenth, because this weekend was I call it was like the weekend of celebration and confusion and contradiction. Celebration, confusion, and contradiction. 3 C's. Gather that. That wasn't even my intention, but that's what it was. Celebration, contradiction, and confusion. Here's what I mean about confusion. I'm going to start there. Saturday, there was a huge and clearly celebratory event at the Franklin Park. And I saw all the banners and all the pictures and all the postings on Facebook, and I actually celebrated I want to congratulate the planners. There's a group of young people who are in the process of transitioning and taking over, because for 30 something years, that job has fallen on a small crew of OGs who did their thing, right? The Roxbury Homecoming. But in the weekend, this turned into people saying, I'm going to Franklin Park for Juneteenth. And they might one day be one and the same, but trust me when I tell you, there are many people who don't think of those 2 things as the same thing. Roxbury Homecoming was an event born in the late 60s in Roxbury out of a funeral discussion, if you will, where a very, very, very well-known Roxbury's own gentleman who passed away, and people came, very popular people came from all over the world and not the country for that funeral. And in that conversation said, isn't it something that it seems the only time we get together is through funerals? Yeah, they were having that conversation even then, and said, well, we need to do something. I know, let's get together in the summertime for just to celebrate each other and to share and catch up. And that's what Roxbury Homecoming was born. And that's what we celebrated for some 30, 40, almost 40 years at the Shattuck site in Franklin Park. And so so satisfy my first C when I said confusion. I'm going to Juneteenth. Roxbury Homecoming, like I said, I hope that one day that we can meld those 2, the actual Roxbury or Our community's Juneteenth event occurred on Sunday at the Museum of African American History. It was a wonderful event, speaking event, educational event where we actually learned stuff, if you will. But don't make no mistake, I'm not saying that Saturday wasn't a fun time. I'm saying that we need to do more educating and celebrating. Because if we were truly celebrating Juneteenth, it would not be a commercialized event. It's a somber event, a somber celebration of freedom, right? For a whole lot of people that many would argue to this day, me included, are still not free. But in case you don't know, in 1865, there was a small town in Texas that learned of the signing of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was actually done in 1862. And all of the kind of the power structure literally kept this from them for 2.5 years. So it took them 2.5 years longer than everyone else to learn about the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. And that was June 19th, the day they learned, they celebrated, and that became Juneteenth. That's the purpose of that celebration, right? So one, I hope I have explained my comment about confusion. Contradictions. Here's that piece. The celebration of Juneteenth, resulting in Juneteenth ice cream, Juneteenth t-shirts, Juneteenth flags, sold in mainstream marketing, mainstream vendors, Walmart, who had the Juneteenth ice cream. If you really knew the history of the Walmart founders and the Walton family, you'd understand why I say it's a story, a weekend of contradictions. Can you imagine? Here's the other contradiction. All of this conversation that you've been reading about in the last 3 or 4 months, about how all these folks are freaked out about this teaching of CRT, critical race theory. I haven't seen anybody really be able to explain. Even people who are rallying against it don't even know what it is. The short of the story is, we don't want you teaching any children in our country about history, about slavery. We don't want to upset them, because there are some people, some children we think would be uncomfortable if you told them what we really did, right? So that's when I talk about the confusion, right? The contradiction is that you, on the one hand, want to sell artifacts, sell trinkets, sell goods, sell services, sell and market Juneteenth, but you don't want anybody to know what Juneteenth really was. That's the contradiction. This is the contradiction of America, right? It's crazy, but this is where we are. Celebration, anytime we get that many Black and brown people in one space, in one place, for something that's not a negative event, is cause for celebration. Don't get me wrong. Having heard what I said about 1 and 2, number 3 is about the celebration. It's about the celebration. And we got to keep working at it. I celebrate the young people who stepped up and said, we'll take it over, we'll plan, but understand and implore them to understand what you have inherited is a treasure. Understand that it is a blessing. Understand that you cultivate it, you stroke it, you protect it, you respect it, and we grow and continue to work together to make sure that our Roxbury homecoming and Juneteenth celebration is truly the celebration of what history demands. And I have to say, I had some really mixed feelings about it. I want to show you something. You probably won't be able to see it, and that's okay. I'm going to post a picture. I'm going to post this picture anyway, so you will get to see. But I want to show you. This is a. See, I'm going to post this on Facebook. This is Lucy. It's no way that you would know Lucy, but I want to tell you that this is one of my cousins. Great grandmother, Lucy. Family came from South Carolina, and like all of my family, my place of birth, my state of birth, came from South Carolina to Arkansas, settled in Conway, Arkansas. My father's family settled in Pine Bluff, in the small cities and towns around Pine Bluff. But that's not why I tell you about Lucy. I tell you about Lucy because out of respect, I don't know what her last name was at this time. Lucy, um, uh, this is the caption that appeared under Lucy's picture. It's only a few lines, but I want to read it to you. Half of the appraised value of a Negro wench named Lucy, who was joint property of, and then I can't really make out the names of the presumed husband and wife who bought her. You heard me. They got a sale. They got a real bargain because they only paid half of the appraised value of this Negro wench. That's what Juneteenth's about. That's what we're commemorating. Please don't ever forget that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Lucy and her photo. I'm going to post it later on Facebook. But when my cousin shared the post, he's actually still in Arkansas, which is, like I said, where I was born. Sunday night, I teared up, really teared up, because I texted him and called him, and I wanted him to know they were tears of joy, because that post allowed me to understand why I was feeling this whole kind of mix of emotion all weekend. Not wanting to be angry about what I'm seeing in terms of the commercialization, wanting to celebrate in the right way, and wanting to commemorate. And then I see the picture, and I was like, it was a jolt to remind me of what this is all about, what it was all about. Half of the appraised value for this Negro wench, who is the joint property of so-and-so. It's not a long time ago, folks, right? This is the thing. I just want, so in the South, that was the reality of what 1862 meant for my ancestors, right? Who many, when I was a girl that I met, were that one generation step away from slavery or an indentured servitude. Indentured servitude was just the next nice phrase, kind of in the evolution of all the things and the terms and names that we were called in this country. And so I think indentured servitude sounded nicer than slavery, but same thing. And so freedom was precious. The idea of freedom was precious, which is why the powers that be hid it from the town in Texas that ended up creating this thing that we now celebrate called Juneteenth. But remember it. I'm not, celebrate, but you got to celebrate the reality of the history. And if other people don't tell it, and if the schools don't want to tell it, then it is our Black obligation to tell it. We have to share. We have to let them know, let everybody know, so they understand where we are, who we are, why we are, right? And what we do, and why we do what we do. And so I say that. Now, it's connected to something else that we watched this week. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to the January 6th hearings. You say, well, Dianne, geez, what does that have to do with anything? Well, here's what it has to do with this week that we're in celebration called Juneteenth. Thinking about all the different spaces and places that Black women are in this in this country. And I'm thinking today even about Shay um, Moss, who was the social worker, election worker volunteer, who, in fact, because of the massive turnout in Georgia, in Fulton County in 2020, enlisted the support of her mother as a volunteer to help count votes in Fulton County. And that decision landed Shay Moss at the witness table yesterday, testifying to her experience having been personally identified by the then President of the United States of America as a vote scammer and a hustler because she was on a video counting the votes in Fulton County. And what he did in that phone call to the Secretary of State, Raspin, whatever his name is, when he mentioned Shay Moss's name and her mom 18 times and said, called them hustlers, vote hustlers, scammers. And what he did was let loose a mob of terrorism by terrorists who continue to this day. And unlike the other white males who you saw, conservative white males, all the Republicans who testified as well about how they were set upon and put upon, they were people of means who were able to enlist a whole coat of protection around them when they had to deal with the wrath of the former president, literally putting all of their lives in danger. But Miss Shay Moss and her mom and her grandmother didn't get that protection. The FBI literally told them they probably should leave, and told her mother, you should probably leave your house because you probably won't be safe. Didn't say it is our obligation and we're going to protect you 24 hours a day. Said you probably want to leave. And I'm not going to go into any more detail about some of the stories she shared, but she's been on my mind, as she should be on all of our minds, of, again, to me, the contradiction of the celebration and commemoration of freedom that Juneteenth purportedly brought to us, and then the juxtaposition of the reality of the lives of the Shay Moss family that, in her words, were turned upside down because she never thought that the President of the United States would sic terrorists on her. Pray, say an extra prayer this week for Shay Moss and her mom and her grandmother. And by the way, Miss Moss has a son who was, I can't even imagine. It happened to accidentally, because he was holding his mom's phone, saw some of the ugly, vicious, sexist, racist, vile, horrific text messages that were being sent to her because she was what has now become this common word, doxed. That means her documentation was posted on social media for all the world to see, and the right wingers got a hold of it, the mob got a hold of it, and they terrorized that family and still do. They knocked on the door of her grandmother and said that they were coming to make a citizen's arrest to her grandmother, and burst through the door saying they were coming to get her granddaughter, Miss Shay Moss. They want to arrest her. And her grandmother, right, could look like my mother, like your mother, had to sustain call her granddaughter screaming in the phone. And her granddaughter, Miss Moss, testified, I could hardly understand what she was saying, but I knew I'd never seen my grandma cry, never mind screaming at the top of her lungs that they had pushed their way into her house. So I feel bad for all of the witnesses who testified to the sustained attack that they had to deal with from the vicious, evil mind of the former president. But what I know is that every one of those people who testified had means to protect themselves, had bodies, had bodyguards, had resources to fortress themselves, but not Miss Moss, and not her mom, and not her grandma. And so, as we're thinking about some of the focus and discussion for Woke Women Wednesday, this is the kind of information that we raise, but this is the kind of women that we lift up. So I just want to lift up Shay Moss, her mother, and her grandmother, and just ask that you would say a special prayer for them. So, um, the time goes by so fast. So let me just talk a little bit about COVID, the surge. So, okay, I'm asking you a question. Know anybody who got COVID lately? I bet your answer is yes, because guess what? I know it's happening. Very quiet surge. Already got a call this morning that one of my staff is not going to be in the office today because his mom tested positive, right? That happens. I know I have a whole family unit in my family that now the baby, the teenager, the mom, and the dad, all have COVID. And baby's an infant, so obviously not vaccinated and coughing. And so, again, saying a prayer. Why is this important? Because I think every day this week I've gotten a call from somebody who says so and so is home, so and so is recovering, so me and my wife are recovering COVID. Folks, it's not done. I know we want to be done with COVID, but trust me when I tell you COVID is not done with us. And so part of the benefit of having a vehicle like WWOC Media is we get to say that. And I get to tell you, and I get to say to you that you have to continue to keep yourself safe, continue to test yourself, test your family. Know that you can still get PCR tests, which is the real serious one. So if you can take rapid tests at home, but if you want the final word, you want to step up to a PCR test. So the Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition, all these months later, people criticizing, still here. As I said to a group of people I spoke to last night at Academy Homes, likelihood if you're in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, even down to Hyde Park, Cleary Square, and you've gotten tested in the last, tested outside of your general practitioner or your doctor, you probably saw it or got it at the Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition van, that big yellow, black, green, and red striped bus that has been traveling around and posting up. And on Fridays we're at Mattapan Square, on Wednesdays they're in Cleary Square, and on Tuesdays in Washington Park Mall, and Saturdays in Franklin Park. Just always try to make ourselves available, because we know that it's not over. It's not over. So, you see the van pull up, get your test. Takes a few minutes, get your test. That's a rapid test. We'll let you know right there. Take you 10 minutes to wait. You have 10 minutes, so wasn't it be worth it? And then once you're diagnosed, you got to sit down, you got to stay home. You want to go get a PCR test, you can still get them at the Bowling Building from 12 noon to 8 p.m. every day from Tuesday through Saturday. Tuesday through Saturday. So 5 days a week, you can get a PCR test. Also at the Bowling Building. Also, a partner with the Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition of CIC, right? CIC Health. CIC Health was the entity that managed the vaccination site at the Reggie Lewis. And again, odds are if you're in Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Lower Roxbury, even Dorchester, the Little Vietnam part of Dorchester, Chinatown, you got a vaccination, first vaccination last year in 2021, you probably got it through some role that the Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition had. Why do I know that? Because I know that we are responsible for moving almost 100,000 people to that site to get vaccinated, and working with CIC. So CIC still there. They are there. They are in both at the Bowling Building in Nubian Square. You can still get that. The PCR test. You can get vaccinations. By the way, you can get vaccinated at the Melnia Cass recreational facility at 120 Martin Luther King Boulevard. They are now doing vaccination for children, and they're open daily from 10, I think it's 10 to 4, 10 to 4, 10 to 5. But at the Melnia Cass, 120, it's quick. It's quick. You'll see the sandwich board out front, walk in. Doesn't take you long, but you can get vaccinated there. And then the testing is everywhere, right? It just is. So we've been busy because COVID is busy. And we're going to stay busy as long as COVID stays busy. And that's just the way it is. And so Sandy checking in, Sandy Robinson said, excellent information. I appreciate it. Sandy, that's our job. You created this space for us to share information with people, and share it we will. Next week, I have a really interesting guest. Actually, for the next 2-3 weeks, I'm going to stay on this whole focus on economics. And why do I say that? Black women in economics, Black community in economics. Because, if you claim to be concerned about or committed to racial reckoning, racial justice, social justice, equity, then it's got to be about economics, right? It's got to be about economics, because that's one of the last frontiers in our quest for that equity is the economic equity. So, we've moved into political space, we've moved into social space, but that economic space, as far back as Martin Luther King says, that is the one economic rights, the one piece that continues to elude us. So in 2022, so many years after the death of MLK, still eludes us. But we're going to have it because there's some stuff happening all over this city and across this state, and Black women are at the center of it. No surprise, right? No surprise. And so we're going to be talking about that. And we're going to be talking about that also in the context of healthcare, the context of housing. That's why you saw Leah Randolph last week talking about substance abuse, mental health, and trauma. We'll continue that. Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition is going to continue some programming even through the summer. We're going to be updating people on monkeypox. Yes, I did say it, monkeypox, it's real. We have cases in Massachusetts. And while the medical advice is that it is not fatal, they said it is more painful than anything that you can imagine. And so I think we should start sharing information with people about what that is. And so we're going to do that in the next several weeks on WWOC Media. I love it that they give me the venue to share information, because information is power. Information is power, and we want our people to be empowered, and they cannot do it unless we provide them information. Thank you, WWOC Media, once again, for creating the opportunity. We'll see you next week at 11. Senator Dianne Wilkerson signing off. But just remember, I know you're tired of COVID. I know you're done with COVID, but COVID is not done with us. So keep yourself safe. Large gatherings, even outside, wear your mask, especially if you're up in people's face talking to them, which is really what homecoming and all of these events have created the space to do. Don't get stupid, right? Don't get stupid. Don't get stupid. I do want to talk about next week. We're going to be doing live. Remember in March during Women's History Month, right? We actually did our March celebration on women from different venues, right? From different venues that we brought to you. We did Fort Hill Bar and Grill. We were at Soleil Restaurant. We were at Dosa Habana on Martin Melnia Cass. We ended at Daryl's Corner Bar and Kitchen, and all of them owned by women of color, right? Boy, did we have a time. So next week on Wednesday, we're going to be broadcasting live from the new Park 54 restaurant in Hyde Park, 5 to 9, right? And this is the surprise. We're going to have some brothers with us, right? Because there are some brothers that are doing some incredible things around this city that you need to know. Because, again, and I'm talking about in terms of the economics and the life, affecting quality of life for Black people. You need to see them. You're going to want to hear them. You're going to want to join us next Wednesday evening. But that doesn't change Wednesday morning. I'll be with you Wednesday morning, but I'm giving you the heads up to mark your calendar for 6:29 in the evening from 54 Park. Can't wait, can't wait, can't wait. We'll see you next week. Stay safe. Wear that mask. Wear that mask. WWOC Radio, WWOC Media signing off. Bye-bye.